Hi everyone, nice to meet you again. I'm Ajahn Ann, and today we are going to talk about the lesson of human rights. We will talk about the Universal Declaration of Human Rights or UDHR, and I will give you some examples of global human rights scenarios, case studies, and articles. But before we'll talk about those two topics, let's review what we learned briefly from the previous lesson. This is the organization named United Nations, which is an international or a global center of harmonizing the actions of nations. I think everyone have heard the name of the organization, UN. The main purposes of UN is to create peace and security, friendly relations among nations, and international cooperation. And right here, the UN has expanded many partners or organizations which relate or take care of human rights. You may have heard UNESCO. You may have heard UNICEF. You may have heard like UNHCR. So each organization is responsible for a specific terms or specific responsibility of human rights. For example, United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, or United Nations Children's Fund. So there are many organizations expanded by the UN internationally, globally. Definitions of human rights that we learn: it is an inherent to all human beings and are entitled to the rights without discrimination or violation. We all have rights since we were born. And the things about human rights are race, sex, nationality, ethnicity, language, religion, right to life and liberty, right to work and education, freedom from slavery and torture, freedom of opinion and expression. Or I'll repeat the definition of human rights as: human rights are the same for all people, everywhere, men and women, young and old, rich and poor, regardless of background, where we live, what we think, or what we believe. All right. So, when individuals or each of us has a right to do in anything we want. Once, when individuals are not being protected or disregarded or violated, that is the matter of human rights violations. Violations, or when people feel they are treated unequally. And human rights violation can happen anywhere or in any unit of our society, starting from a family, society, and community. I gave you an example of some human rights violation. Can you remember that? The first one is domestic violence. It can happen with kids, husband or wife within a family. Sexual harassment in workplace. Children's rights. Gender harassment. Gender harassment can also the same thing that happen in the family or in domestic violence. Health and economy. Rich and poor. The gap between the rich people and the poor people. About poverty. Human rights on human trafficking. Labor. Human rights on same sex marriage. Civil and politics. Racism. It is about skin color or origin of people. So that when people are violated, they call for freedom. And freedom is the power or right to act, to speak, or to think as one wants without barrier or obligation. And I mentioned about what? About the problem in our society that too much freedom, too many rights that allow people to be irresponsible because we do only think of our own rights and our own freedom without considering others' rights and others' freedom. So there are many controversial issues happening in our society, in our world right now. Disadvantages of freedom of speech on social media, that once when we have freedom on speech and then we can say we can do whatever we want on social media, but we forget to think about other people's feeling. Your words may hurt someone or somebody. Freedom of expression on politics. Again, too much freedom can cause problem. As you can see here, fighting. Freedom of press on social media. It violates privacy security. It violates unsuitable situation or unsuitable behavior for children. All right. From the examples of human rights violation that we can see all over the world or in our society, we know that it is good or bad, it is right or wrong. So you can choose what to do in order not to harm or hurt other people, right? And the 12 vocabulary here are classwork, or we can say that they all are keywords or the necessary vocabulary which relate to human right. So right here are the example or some definition of these 12 vocabulary. So please check the definitions here with your assignment, with your classwork. All right. I would like to talk about a few vocabulary that are interesting. Look at number 3 and number 4. Discrimination and racism. The two words, two vocabulary here are quite similar. They are the act of making unjustified distinction between people, but for racism is something more about ethnicity, about nation, about culture, about skin color or religion. While discrimination is something a bit broader. All right? These are the differences between discrimination and racism. Okay, I will not spend too much time on this because we are going to talk, it is just the review, and we are going to talk about another topic. These are the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. There are 30 articles. There are 30 articles. Start from right to equality to freedom from state or personal interference in the above rights. The last article seems to be like a summary or a conclusion of the 29 or above. Okay, and what we are going to do today is what? We will talk about the situation happen or the situation that is usually happening in our daily life. And then we will relate to the article 1 to 30. Okay. Before I will talk about case studies or scenarios that we usually see or hear or face in our daily life. Let me talk about the Declaration of Human Rights first. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights was proclaimed by the United Nations or the UN. The UN meeting in Paris on the 10th of December in 1948. The meeting announced these human rights for all 30 articles as a common standard of achievement for all peoples and all nations. These all 30 articles have been universally translated into over 500 languages. So it means that the 30 articles, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights here is used globally into any nations, any group of people according to the main purpose of the United Nations organization to create peace to all, to create rights to all. Okay, so let's take a look at case study number 1. Scenario or the situation. I think most of you might see the news recently. It happened in Thailand that one man, actually, and his wife as well, they went to a hospital because he was bitten by a dog. And when he was in an emergency room, the nurses laughed at him and talked to him badly and asked a stupid question to him. He was so upset and he posted and his wife, his wife posted on her Facebook about bad behavior and bad manner that the nurses or the assistant nurses treated to them, to him. They was upset because they had not been treated with dignity or respect. We are all human beings. We are equal. So it is wrong. The nurses or assistant nurses or the officers there has no right to do so. Do you agree? When someone did in a bad manner to you, how do you feel? Same to them. You feel angry, you feel unsatisfied, same to them. So, this kind of situation usually happens, and I know that many of you have experienced this kind of thing before. It might not happen to you directly, but it might happen to your parents, to your friends, right? So, let's take a look at the article. In which article that this scenario relate. According to the article here, and I also have this handout for you. All right. This handout consists of 30 articles with explanation so that you will see each article with each explanation. All right. So what I have mentioned here, scenario number 1 and article 3 and article 5. Article 3 says everyone has right to life, liberty, and security of person. Do you agree with this article and this scenario? Yes. Another one is article number 5. No one shall be subjected to torture or to cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. It's unfair, right? Unfair for them. Let's move to another example. Politic crisis. Politic crisis in many countries, like in Myanmar, in Russia, in Thailand, in any countries in the world. It's the truth. There might be some unfair thing happen so that people or the citizen of the country call for rights to vote, rights to express their idea about politics. Politic crisis can relate to article number 21. The article number 21 says that everyone has the right to take part in the government of his country, directly or through freely chosen representatives. It is something sensitive when we talk about politics, but we can see it usually happens. There are two sides, the one that takes the government side and the opposite one. The third one. The third one is about the officer named Emily Johnson. She was denied a handicapped parking spot at work. She is a disabled one and her boss denied it. So it means that she needed to go to somewhere else to park her car. Even she is a disabled person. Just only because her boss wanted to leave the parking lot open for other visitors. It seems her boss ignored the right of Emily Johnson. And this scenario can relate to article number 25 about everyone has the right to a standard of living adequate for the health and well-being, and also to get a necessary social services. Right to get social services. Right to have an equal health and well-being. So this is another point or another matter of human right. Next one. This was the news recently happened in the beginning of this year in January. An Asian woman was killed when a man pushed her in front of an oncoming subway in New York City. See? It happened. Even they did not know each other. They haven't met each one before. But it happened. So we can relate this scenario with article number 2, number 5, and number 15. Everyone is entitled to all the rights and freedoms without distinction of any kind, such as a race, color, sex, language, religion, and etc. I think you can hear this kind of situation, this kind of news, especially in the Western country, or let's say in the US. Asian women were usually abused by the American. So it is something very, very, very sad in the society. And the last one, it is about environment. Environment is also part of human right. So you can see many activists or many group of people or protesters call for government to solve the problem of global warming or climate change, right? And this one is the things that happened in 1989. It is the global controversial issue for environmental activism. Exxon, the oil company, spilled the oil on the ocean, and it caused and it killed many marine life, fish, and also plants under the sea, the ocean. And it created a huge damage for environment. So for this one can also something about violation on other people's rights to live in a well-being or in a good environment. So it can be under article number 25 again, health and well-being. All right. So the 5 case studies are only a few scenarios happening in our life, or not in our life, but we can see from our daily life. Actually, we do not want other people violate us, right? So hopefully this kind of thing will not happen to all of us, but we could learn, we can see from other people's life. So from the 5 case studies, 5 scenarios that I gave you as an example, now I would like you to find more. I'd like you to find more 5 scenarios as I did, as I showed you as the example. Do the same, but please find another or the other scenarios. You can get it from the news, you can get it from your experience. Whatever you have heard, you have seen, or you have experienced. And then please write down or tell a story about each scenario briefly, like I did. Only 2 to 3 sentences. Or you can write about the topic but make it clear. And I would like you to indicate which article each scenario is. And one scenario can be more than one article like this. All right? So this is my example. So I would like you to find some more, 5 more scenarios. All right. And I have the file for you so you can work on this file. It is available in the assignment. But if you have the problem opening with the file, you can work, you can create, or you can design your own template. All right, but make sure that you give me 5 scenarios and articles, scenarios and the appropriate article. I'll upload this file for you again so that you can read through each article, the content of each article, and you can choose your scenario and articles here. All right. Before I will leave, or I will end up the lesson, again, I would like to remind you that even we have freedom, we have right, but please do not forget to respect the equal rights of other people. We as people, human beings, we have a responsibility to ensure that we exercise our own rights with consideration for the rights of others. So I hope that my lesson, it is something very, very basic, human rights. I would like you to be able to manage, to adapt and apply the way that we have to do the way that we should do in order not to harm or violate other people and cause problem in our society. We can start doing good thing from ourselves. I hope it is beneficial for you for your life, and you will learn from your experience when you grow up, and you will learn what is good for you to do, what is bad for you not to do. Thank you very much for your cooperation, for your attention, and I hope to see you again sometime later. Goodbye, everyone.